John, I'm going to put my jacket on so I look a little bit cooler.
You could have said it's because it's cold.
No, it's because I'm vain and I want to look a little bit cooler.
It's a good jumper you got, mate. You're rocking a good jumper.
I'm going to just mess my hair up a little bit. There you go. Am I good for camera?
You did just do the Boris shuffle, didn't you?
I did, didn't I?
This is Sheer Isolation. It's presented by Kieran Moore in Chippenham and Jon Ponting in Cricklade.
Kieran, it has been, 3-4 weeks since we've done one of these. We are back, as if nothing has ever happened.
3 or 4 weeks of bliss. It's been just wonderful. I've not lifted a finger. I've eaten all the cheese. There's no more cheese left. So the cheese industry has been saved. The dairy industry has been saved. And I'm now raring to go. We've got to run off all this cheese. So let's do it.
I do still have plenty of cheese in my fridge, but it is all vegan cheese because I don't really do dairy anymore because I'm getting old.
I've not had any of that vegan cheese, but I'm sure when I reach your ripe old age, I'll do the same.
I can recommend the Applewood. But anyway, we have started this show on a high, haven't we? Welcome to Sheer Isolation. We can't top that. That is the top conversation to start this year off.
I feel like I've scored the winning goal in the home derby, of my local football teams. I've scored the winning goal. The crowds are going wild. They're all chanting my name. It's like, yes, let's do this, 2021!
And when we finish talking about cheese and just ranting like a madman, we will do our best to promote the local music in the west of England, as we were doing last year. We've had a few weeks off, and Kieran, so much has happened in the last few weeks. We recorded our last show. COVID cases were going down really nicely. No sign of any big waves or spreads of new strains of the virus. There was no Brexit deal. There is now a Brexit deal. And there was no sign of a lockdown, and we're now into lockdown.
So what you're saying, John, is all our fault?
Do you think if we kept doing this, things would have been
more
mellow?
Maybe, yeah. We wouldn't have got. If we kept on doing this, we wouldn't have got a Brexit deal. Wouldn't be locked down, and the cases would still be going down. There you go.
Tonight's guest is a musician called Nick Gibbs, who is in a band called Folklaw. They're kind of at the more rockier end of folk, but we've invited Nick on because him and the band, they do a lot of touring around Europe, particularly in Germany. So with this new Brexit deal fresh off, hot off the press, we thought we'd get Nick in because he's already been looking into and researching, can he actually go on tour this year? So we're going to take a break from our usual COVID agenda, and we're going to have a Brexit show instead, which I know, Kieran, you're looking forward to. I'm sure you've got plenty of rants ready to go.
Not ready to go, but I'm sure when I get prodded with the right stick, I'll go open on one.
All right, we will start off with a track, and it's my turn to pick the first tune of the year for Sheer Isolation. Excellent. And I'm going to pick a track from a Cirencester duo. It's a band that I know and follow. I've been following them for years. They're called Ethemia. It's Bernie and Michaela. And I've picked this video in particular. This is a track called Real Love, and it's just a lovely wintry animation video. And I thought the fact that it's not got above 3 degrees in about a fortnight, and we've got sleet and snow and all kinds of things going on in the weather. This is like one of those lovely feel-good videos, and it's a really sweet song as well. So yeah, this is Ethemia.
He came in as she arrived. He'd been working 9 to 5. She don't hear a word he says. Can anyone hear his prayers? Real love ain't blind. That's just the fickle kind. Real love ain't blind. That's just the fickle kind. Don't believe the word they say. It'll lead you astray. Don't believe the word they say. It'll lead you astray. Every night he feels alone. She's losing sight of him. His heart is caving in. Real love ain't blind. That's just the fickle kind. Real love ain't blind. That's just the fickle kind. Don't believe a word they say. It'll lead you astray. Don't believe a word they say. It'll lead you astray. Hold on tight, don't lose sight of him. Losing your grip, gonna lose him. Real love is slipping from you. You're gonna get hurt, you're gonna get hurt too. Real love ain't blind. That's just the fickle kind. Real love ain't blind. That's just the fickle kind. Don't believe a word they say. It'll lead you astray. Don't believe a word they say. It'll lead you astray.
The other day, I was in a YouTube wormhole, and I came across a latter day, a very recent Travis song by a Scottish indie Brit rockers called Travis, and that has a very similar vibe to what you've just played. And I was amazed to know that Travis even did that. It blew my mind. But yeah, really lovely band, really lovely sound.
And Bernie and Michaela, if you are listening out there, because they give the best hugs, I am really looking forward to an Ethemia hug. It's the first chance we get. They are
lovely.
They are mad huggers. So I'm really looking forward to that.
They're probably really sad that they are not allowed to touch anyone.
In place of product placement, I was just going to ask you, have you seen anything exciting happen over Christmas and New Year? Has there been any exciting releases, any exciting news that you just couldn't wait to get hold of a new release?
No, the most exciting thing I've seen is the fact that Brexit has enabled people or stopped people selling product abroad. So that's annoying.
Has it been stopped, or has there just been issues getting into the country?
It's a tax thing. It's a VAT thing. And there's a few foreign record labels that won't ship to the UK now because the VAT they have to pay entering the country means that UK people don't want to buy the record. It's just too expensive. And I think with records going out of the country, I know the Anchoress, and who's a Welsh musician, and then who was it? It was Invader Records, and that, again, similar thing. Products now have so much more additional costs to them and paperwork, it's not making it viable. Who would have thought Brexit would cause so much hassle?
Okay, well, while we're talking about Brexit, let's move on to this week's guest, who is Nick Gibbs. Now, Nick Gibbs is a musician, the main singer in a band called Folklaw, and as I said in the earlier link, they do quite a lot of touring across Europe, so they've been very keen to see what's been the finer points of this Brexit deal, to look at how do musicians tour, what kind of visas do you need, so he's been looking into that. Let's hear what he has to say. How did the band get into all of these European tours? Because you always seem to be going out that way onto the European mainland to do tours. How did you get into that, and how do you maintain it? How do you keep going back? Have you got fan bases in different countries?
Yes, a little bit of that. Some countries are easier than others, I think, especially it depends on how much you speak the language of the country you're going to. But places like Germany, Netherlands, those types of countries are particularly receptive. like some UK sort of bands with UK lyrics and English lyrics and that sort of thing. And if you can speak a bit of the language on stage and have a banter with the crowd, that's good, but it's not like a prerequisite to going. I think a lot of bands, when they start off going into Europe, they'll maybe book a couple of gigs with a few sort of small pubs and that sort of thing, or maybe try and get in touch with a little agent that they might have met from another band, that sort of thing, and then kind of work in that way. And you can get over to Europe, really cheaply on the ferry, for
You could.
eight quid or whatever. Yeah,
You could.
a bit slower nowadays, but and as you play sort of more venues and festivals, you sort of start. It's exactly the same in any country, but slightly easier in Europe. That you start to meet more promoters and things, and the fees that you get at the festivals in Europe and the way that you're looked after with accommodation, food and drink, you can actually make a living as a musician in Europe much more easily than you can in the UK. So yeah, it's an absolutely wonderful place to play and tour as a musician. Yeah,
You get looked after better in Europe, don't you, in terms of riders, etc. You don't have to ask for it; they're already going to give you food, etc. That's kind of part of the deal, isn't it, with Europeans?
Yeah, that's right. Whereas in the UK, you finish a gig and you might go to the bar and ask for a beer, and you might get a scowl. Sometimes you get a beer, and if you get a fee. Yeah, but in the worst places, in some bits of London and so on, you might have to pay to play, or in the UK, or take a big risk on tickets and selling your own tickets for gigs and things. Whereas in Europe, it really is the kind of the reverse way round, and it's a music scene much more as a profession. Even for sort of semi-professional and amateur musicians, and in Europe.
I believe in Europe. I know for the fact in France. I'm not sure about other places, but if you are a musician and you're out of work, you can claim the equivalent of the dole. So do take it very, very seriously. They had a similar thing that happened over here, where a lot of their venues were obviously under threat, and the government effectively bailed them out and just said, "There's no way we're losing our arts. We're going to fund it and look after them." And I would imagine that they're going to come out of this in a much better position than we are.
So Nick, I'm going to take us back a few years. So I think it was not long after the Brexit referendum the first result came out. You met up with the community secretary, Robert Jenrick, and you kind of challenged him in a car park from my memory. Do you want to give us the story about that? Yeah.
Well, he's my local MP, for better or worse. Make your own mind up on that one. He was doing his sort of weekly surgery, and he was kind of one of Bojo's lap dogs at that time, but he wasn't quite as high up the food chain as he is now. And I thought I'd go along to his surgery, and it was in the Co-op car park, which I thought was good. Co-op, that's good for musicians and so on. So I went there and took him a T-shirt and a CD, as you do whenever you're a musician. You take a bit of promo stuff with you, don't you? To try and convert people. It just happened that I got a contract through for a German festival that day, and we were approaching one of those no-deal Brexit decision point, where it was going right up to the wire. We thought we might have a no-deal Brexit within a couple of days or a week or something. And I had this contract. I sort of said to him, would you sign that contract, knowing the uncertainties of the no-deal Brexit? Because I was just trying to push for some kind of agreements that would make life easier or more certain. And he said he wouldn't feel comfortable signing it, and it was kind of a risk-based decision. And the reason it was a risk-based decision is because there just was no concrete certainty about anything. Whereas now we're in a situation where we've got a little bit more certainty, and it looks really bad. In some ways, it's still helpful, because at least then you can decide not to sign a contract and not to do a festival, and the festivals aren't left in the balance wondering what to do. Now
that we do have this Brexit deal, I know that you're, if we were in a COVID-free world, then you would be looking to book yourself into European gigs. Probably this time of year would be the time you'd be booking yourself in. So what do you know about this new Brexit arrangement for travelling musicians who want to go into mainland Europe? Yeah, so it's for small bands especially, it's pretty horrific. There's obviously some common things, the same as like any traveller to Europe. You need 6 months on your passport and your insurance and things, and your e-hic card. Although nowadays it's going to be a G-hic card, and the slight irony with that is it's called G-hic because they wanted to make it sound global, but it's less global because it covers off just Europe, and it's less countries than it did before. So there's a lot of irony in that G-hic card, but don't get me started on that one. And
Yeah, but in terms of musicians, some of the big uncertainties around work permits. So, for example, Germany, we haven't agreed what the work permit arrangement's going to be with Germany yet, and we're hoping it's going to be part of the visa waiver program, but it hasn't been decided for musicians. So in the Netherlands, you can probably go for 6 weeks, if you're touring, but you're without a visa, but you probably still need a work permit. So those are some uncertainties, and then there's added complications as well around taking your instruments abroad. So
Yeah.
if you want to take your instruments over to Europe and then bring them back again, you effectively have to provide proof that you're not taking instruments over and that you're going to sell them, instruments and electrical equipment. So you have to get a carnet, which costs 360 quid. And I've asked HMRC whether that's per band member or per band, and they've said they think it's per band and that it's like supposed to be per band, but the idea is you're supposed to list on this carnet all of your musical equipment that you're taking to and from Europe. And then ideally, in an ideal world, you would pay a cash deposit and land it with Chambers of Commerce, which is 40% of the value of your musical equipment, which is a huge amount of money for most musicians carrying their instruments abroad.
Yeah.
And the reason they keep that as a security is in case you went abroad, sold your stuff, and then Germany wanted to reclaim the customs duty on the stuff that you'd sold. But the reality is musicians are going to take their stuff abroad and bring it back home again.
Of course.
So you pay this once a year, and if you can't stump up the $4,000 or however much it would be as a security, then Chambers of Commerce will do this sort of deal where you kind of pay another fee to them for insurance, so they would cover it for you, and then but that ends up at another 160 quid or whatever. So you stump up 500 quid to start with per year, probably per band, but it could be per musician. Like if you're traveling as a duo one time and then you're traveling as a band another time, and so on, then different band lineups would have to get it. And that's just to enable you to take your musical instruments across the border and back again. And you have to go through the red lane at customs as well to show these documents. And to go through the red lane at customs, they recommend you book a time slot, and you have to leave 3 hours extra. So this all starts to add up. There's a lot of red tape. It starts to add up. And in theory, you can do like what they call a duplicate list thing. There's a separate form you can list out and fill out. But as far as I can tell from HMRC, if you do that, then you have to settle this kind of security waiver stuff at the border, and you have to do it every trip. Whereas with the Carnet card, you pay once and it lasts for the year. But you need a lot of certainty that you're going to be touring as a small band. You need before you do that.
Do you think that's going to be putting a lot of people off from touring?
Definitely. I mean, at the moment, I think in the long run, when things get settled and there's no coronavirus around, or less, and we've got more confidence the gigs are going to happen, maybe you've got more slots on your tour, people will stump up the cash. But say right now, like for me personally, myself today, we had to decide whether to sign a contract for a festival in Germany in the summer.
Right.
A festival that they're taking the risk at the moment, sending contracts out, thinking that they'll probably go ahead, but they're not sure. And we just can't sign that, and we can't take a punt on it right now, partly because of coronavirus and partly because of the Brexit regulations. So I'm sure it'll be putting bands off, and some bands won't know about it. And the challenge for them is when they get to the border, all their instruments could be confiscated, either on the way out or worse on the way back. And then they're stuck in Europe, and then you're in the right mess.
So what is there stopping bands like yourself? And I wouldn't suggest that you did this for a minute, but as 4 or 5 musicians, you just go in 4 or 5 separate cars, get the ferry completely separately, just have a guitar in the back or a keyboard in the back, and just poodle off to Germany.
Yeah,
under the radar.
That busman's holiday thing. So, and in the old days, that's what bands used to do quite a lot. And it's a risk. Go back. It sounds like Robert Jenrick now. I'm going to say it's a risk-based decision. But it is. But do you want to take that risk? And I think it's time will tell. In the first year of Brexit, it's probably not a good time to do it. Road bands might be a bit more flexible, but more likely we'll get more flexibility built into the system by then.
Are we now in a situation where touring in France is the same as touring in America? Is it the same paperwork and the same hoops you have to jump through now.
It feels a little bit similar. It's going to be slightly easier. Like America, particularly, is a nightmare. I remember when we went to Canada once when I was much younger, about 20, and we didn't have visas sorted out, and it was it was a very dicey situation. And we ended up on the border, going through passport control, and they were saying, what are you doing here with your instruments? And we could have ended up either just on a return flight home, or ended up in much deeper trouble, really. And I can just imagine bands getting into these situations going to Europe now. That's what worries me. It's like it's not going to be quite as hard as America or something, but you can still land yourself in trouble really easily if you make the wrong choices. If any musicians are listening, there's a couple of bits of good news that that look like they were going to be hard, but they're not. So if you want to take your CDs to sell on tour, that's actually really easy to get yourself an EROI number. Go onto the government website. It's easy to get one of those. Just plug in your national insurance number or whatever. You can get one of those, and then you can take your CDs with you. Just have to declare how many you're taking. Have some original receipts from when you bought them from your pressing company, and you can take them in your van. As long as it's a van with less than 9 seats. So that's really straightforward.
That's good.
Yeah. So and a word of warning, like if you've got any like wood in your instruments or something which is endangered species, like ebony on your violin, on your fingerboard, or in your rosewood on your guitar or whatever, and they're part of the CITES endangered species list, then you have to get that now. But as with Brexit, you're going to have to get a CITES certificate for it, which is free to get at the moment. But you have to get that and show it to customers when you go through, to enable you to take the endangered species wood in and out of the country over the border.
Wow, I did not know that. That's really genuinely quite interesting.
Musicians Union's got a big flowchart diagram. If you go on their website, you can get that. I think everyone can get hold of that on the MU website, and it sort of runs through all the costs and the order you have to do everything to go touring in Europe.
We asked you to pick a track to play, Nick, and you've picked a chap called Paul Carbuncle. And a track called Chopping an Onion. So who is he and why have you picked him? Yeah,
he's a local Nottingham guitarist, hewn a little bit from the punk era, as you'll see by his haircut when he's playing. And I picked him because he's kind of a well-revered musician locally on the folk circuit. But he's got a bit of a rough edge, but he's got a really deep, meaningful lyrics. He was over touring in Europe, actually in Catalonia, when they were having the separatist, struggles with the rest of Spain.
Oh,
and so,
was he?
And, which was an exciting place to gig, I think, at that time. And he's a really sound bloke.
That's someone who really has delved into the finer details of what it means and how it affects us. And I'm, as you can probably tell, I'm all doom and gloom. It's all terrible. We shouldn't be doing this. Go back to that. And he's come away with this saying, well, actually,
he's a realist.
He's realist. Yes, some of these things are bad, but there's workarounds, and in some cases, X, Y, Z. He's very much the practical day-to-day of it. So I really appreciate him taking his time to tell us that.
She was chopping an onion she'd grown in the vegetable patch she dug in her lawn. She glanced out the window and then looked again as the telegram boy turned into the lane. She shamefully wished the young angel of death upon innocent neighbours under her breath. Then her heart split apart and a single tear fell as he walked up the path and rang on the bell. He stood in his navy blue jacket and hat and held out the envelope, eyes on the mat. She opened it painfully, thank you, she said. Regret to inform was as far as she read. words as she sits on the stair with a cold cup of tea and a howl of despair. It's been 17 hours and she can't understand why her son had to vanish in some distant land. It's been 17 weeks and she wishes she knew if he suffered, how he suffered, where he suffered and with who. And then comes a letter describing a grave. Says she ought to feel proud. He was strong, he was brave. It's been 17 years and she's never known why her boy had to go, why he didn't come home. She's still growing veg and she's still baking pies. And when she chops onions, no one asks why she cries.
We've just played a track called Poor. The track is called Chopping an Onion by a lad called Paul Carbuncle. And amazing hair, proper Mohican hair.
Yeah, proper, right down the sides, shaved everywhere else, proper. No, he's not doing it by half.
No.
And it's a nice, fast acoustic punk song. I mean, that would work at any of my shows practically.
Oh, you're missing your shows. You can't wait to get them back on again, can you?
Can't wait. To be honest, mate, I don't know if I said this to you before, but I love doing acoustic gigs and folk punk gigs and all the rest of it, and I love that scene to death. But the one thing I really, really want to do right now is get in front of a loud electric band and just have my face melted. You know, as much as I love acoustic music and all the rest of it, just want to hear a loud band just smash the out of all their equipment and just go mental. I want to see Part Chimp in a tiny venue. That's what I want. I was going to just observe one thing with regards to this thing and the values of what we offer, and the music industry is worth billions to our economy when you consider all the other factors that are involved in it, like from wet sales and bars, etc., that are not necessarily associated with music itself but are a knock-on effect from the music. It's just worth astronomical amounts of money. The fishery industry, which was what we hung a lot of Brexit on, is worth like less than 500 million. And the value of the two and what it represents, obviously they're miles apart. I discovered, or I learned, that two other things dwarf the fishery, income to the UK. Warhammer, the games Warhammer, earns the UK more money than the fishery industry does. And bizarrely, the sex toy industry, British-made sex toy industry, earns the UK more money than fishing does.
Best in the world, Kieran. Best in the world.
Best in the world. So well done, Love Honey.
Let's do a little bit of news. Now, we've mainly focused on Brexit, but obviously the other big story that's happened is the rising COVID cases, the fact that we've gone into another lockdown. All venues, all pubs are closed for the foreseeable. I know you would have been a very risky person if you were running a venue and starting to book acts for February and March, but what do you think the situation is currently, Kieran?
I had Ultrasounds due to play Moles in April, and they've emailed through today to say let's postpone it. The same thing with Lady Nade, who was due to play at the Town Hall in Trowbridge. We said let's postpone it. Everything's been put back to beyond April, and in fact we've not booked a firm date for any of them. There's just no point. I think now this is the last of it. I genuinely think that because this inoculation, this vaccination is coming in, we will start seeing the return to being able to function again, which is amazing news. But it does mean that this one last little push where venues are going to be shut, hopefully will be it. I don't think gigs are going to happen in February. I did have a few things planned. We were looking at doing some socially distanced shows. They've all been completely taken off the table. Trowbridge Town Hall would like to investigate doing some socially distant shows in April, which is obviously 3 months away from now. It's a possibility. I think the Easter weekend, which is mid-April, so potentially 3 months' time, you might be able to do something. But again, these are not going to be national touring acts, because national touring acts need definitives. They need to know they can definitely do this. And you just can't say that you can. So
yeah, not the best start to the year, but as you say, there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. So give it a few months and let's hope we get back to normal then. If people want to get in touch with us, our email address is sheerisolation@gmail.com. We've got a fair few songs in there that we'll be hopefully featuring in the coming weeks. And we will leave it at that, I think, Kieran. So it's been been a really educational first show of the year. Learning
Yeah, it
all
has,
about
yeah, it's-
Brexit and what you have to do as a travelling musician.
Yeah, I'm sure we can't bring better news, but from here on in, it all just gets better. So,
There you go. Kieran has said that. It must be true. Cool. Lovely job, Kieran.
cheers, mate.
I'll let you go back to work.